This computer. Well, hello everyone. This is part 2 of the section of the course on talent identification and development. And given its importance, I really want to cover this section of the course in great depth. So if you'll just bear with me, I'd like you to watch this video first of all, which is on the implications of talent identification and development. And I want to look at the issues that are raised and cover them in more depth before we draw conclusions. Okay.
Hey coach, welcome back. The previous videos summarised how children grow and develop in 4 key areas: social, physical, emotional and cognitive, otherwise known as the SPEC model. This video will look at the implications of how children grow for talent identification and development. Talent identification and development systems have become popular in recent years. These systems aim to help find and nurture young athletes into the sporting superstars of tomorrow. Talent identification is the process of finding individuals with the potential at an earlier age to become elite performers in the future. This often involves coaches and scouts observing sporting performance to decide on a player's potential. Talent development systems provide athletes with a suitable learning environment to accelerate and fulfill their potential. This learning environment is often supported by higher quality coaching, enhanced training and competition, and other support services like strength and conditioning and medical support. Different sports and countries run different talent identification and development programs. In some sports, these can start within children from 7 years of age. Yes, that's right, 7 years of age. However, as children grow, this can make talent identification and development challenging. Here are 3 key challenges for talent identification within young athletes that you should be aware of. Challenge 1. Predicting potential at an early age is very difficult. Talent identification ultimately involves trying to predict the future. The further away an individual is from adulthood, the less accurate a talent identification decision can be. Trying to predict potential within childhood is also difficult when we consider a child's growth. As discussed in the previous 4 videos, children grow socially, physically, emotionally, and cognitively. As these types of growth all occur at different times, this makes talent identification decisions even more difficult. Growth and development at certain time points can influence sporting performance and how talent is perceived. In a way, all that glitters is not gold, and some gold may be hidden until full growth is achieved. Lastly, talent identification should focus on predicting potential. Assessing future potential against current performance is difficult. What does potential look like? As you can see on the screen, Joseph Baker and colleagues presented a 3x3-way matrix of performance versus potential to help coaches classify athletes as high-performing, high potential in box number 9 to low-performing, low potential in box number 1. Overall, talent identification is very much about thinking about the future. So get out your crystal balls. Okay, so over to challenge 2. Early identification equals early specialization. Talent identification within sports can occur at early ages. For example, within gymnastics, this can occur between 6 to 9 years and 7 to 8 years in soccer. These early talent identification processes may promote early sport specialization, which includes intensive year-round training within a single sport. Early specialization may enhance sport-specific performance in the short term. However, it has recently been hotly debated on the benefits of this approach compared to youth athletes sampling a wide range of sports. Research shows that those who play multiple sports while growing up have a stronger chance of becoming top athletes. The International Olympic Committee has raised awareness of some potential negative outcomes of early specialisation. These negative outcomes include injury, overtraining, and negative psychosocial health, such as burnout. Therefore, although early talent identification may have some benefits to sports, in the interest of the health and well-being of young athletes, coaches should consider the potential negative impact of such early talent identification programs before deciding this is the way to go. And finally, challenge 3. Young athletes are grouped into age groups. Athletes within most sports, like education, are grouped into annual age categories. For example, in the United Kingdom, we use the 1st of September to the 31st of August as the selection start and cut-off dates, which coincide with the school year. This process is designed to provide equal competition and developmental opportunities for young athletes. From a talent identification perspective, this process should allow equal opportunities for athletes to be identified. However, this fails to consider the chronological age differences between individuals within an annual age category, otherwise known as relative age. For example, if we consider 2 children, one born on the 1st of September and the other born on the 31st of August, there is a 364-day difference in age, but they will play in the same age group. These differences have resulted in what is known as the relative age effect. The relative age effect is the short-term and long-term participation and development consequences resulting from these differences in age. Ultimately, young athletes can be advantaged or disadvantaged within talent identification and youth sport based upon their birth date and the dates used to create annual age groups. The relative age effect is very common across children's sport and talent identification programs. See the graph here, which shows relative age effects in UK Rugby League's talent identification system. 55% of players selected into their national programme at 13 to 15 years were born between September and November. These relative age advantages or disadvantages are a result of the likely enhanced growth of relatively older individuals. The advantages may not only be physical, but also cognitive, social, and emotional. Remember the SPEC model. To summarise, it is vital coaches understand how children grow and develop and the impact this has on the need for and impact of talent identification and development systems. Now it's time for you to think about how this plays out in your coaching context. Please move on to the reflective activities and remember to download the study guide for further information. See you soon.
By advertising on YouTube, I catch the eye of my ideal customers at the right time.
Right. We're going to do some of these activities, so I want you to have a think about it. But have you got any initial thoughts just after having watched the video? Vicky doesn't look very happy, and neither does Evie, which is fine. Why are you not very happy?
I just never, like the age group thing, I've never seen it explained like that. Like, I've always known with school, people I've known who are born in the August, it's kind of well known that there's going to be a difference, but yet we put them in the same age category as someone near enough a year older.
Yeah, yeah. I first became aware when I was teaching at university, and I was one of the admissions people interviewing for King's College. And I discovered some research that was done at that point in time, and I'm sure it's been repeated in it because it's consistent. For every 3 months that the child was younger, there was 1 GCSE point of a difference. So the children that were born that were like August birthdays were on average 4 GCSE points lower than the children that were born in the September. It's quite a thought. Evie, when's your birthday?
I'm December.
So you're in the middle, so you're not too bad. Vicky, where's yours?
I'm December as well.
Right, so you're not too badly impacted by it. In Scotland, the age is actually determined by the 1st of March, and there's a bit of a window where you can get delayed, but there's automatic January and February, you can get delayed if you want, which is very helpful because you can have like premature babies as well. You know, and you can have babies nowadays that are like 2 months premature. So there's an automatic for January and February, but you can even go back later if you get an educational psychologist report. Okay, so we're all agreed then that there's a huge impact just because of the month that they were born. Seeing those figures from rugby league, I mean, it was so stark. That's their talent identification system. Now, I strongly believe that the top ID in rugby league is not all born in September, October, and November. 55% of them were September, October, and November. And I mean, and the drop off into even like the December, January, February birthdays was huge. There's no way that that's correct. So the system is clearly, you know, working, if that's what you want to call it, working. Now, what I would like to do is I'll just get the page. I've got it ready. Yep, I do. And I want you to have a look at this task and share screen again. Right. And the task is looking at these challenges that he raised in the video and what actions you're going to take to avoid the pitfalls. Okay, so the first challenge is going to be predicting potential at an early age is very difficult. Challenge 2, early identification equals early specialization. And challenge 3, young athletes are grouped into age groups. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that, and then I'm going to stop that share, and I'm going to do a whiteboard. And then hopefully, yeah, it does. So that, I'm just going to put that across the top. Yeah, it is. Okay. So for each of those challenges, what I would like you to do is to put things up on the whiteboard. And we'll talk about them, but I really want you to put some things onto the whiteboard. And you can do a bit of both. You can talk and put it up on the whiteboard as well. And on my screen, Evie, if you go to the middle, Vicky, you go to the right, and I generally find that Finlay goes on the left. Okay, so if we can kind of like stick to that. And Finlay, you're more to the bottom, and Vicky, you're more to the top, and Evie, you're more in the middle. Okay, to try to help to spread it around. And remember, this is actions that you're going to take to avoid these challenges. And Finley, even although you're not feeling well, if you can still put the things on the whiteboard that are yours, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, that's an excellent one. Who put that one up? Teach everyone with a learning program to overcome predicting their potential. Once sorted, you can get a personal plan done. Teach everyone, I love it. Who was that?
Me.
That's fab, Evie. Yep. Yep.
I can't seem to move the writing, so it's kind of just in the middle.
I think that's pretty good. I'm pretty sure that'll be okay.
Okay.
You know, because it's quite difficult to judge what the middle actually is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit easier if you're at the bottom or if you're at the top. And if you've got any more to add as well, that'd be great. What thoughts do you have that you would like to share on that, Evie?
The fact that it is difficult to predict like your skater, especially if you don't know them very well and they're just starting out. So I would have like a, I don't know, like a 5-step program where I'd work with them just to kind of get to know their basis and how well they're going to learn and adapt to my teaching. And once I kind of get the feel of that, I can then get a more personal plan done to help make my skater thrive.
Yeah, exactly. And I like the concept that what you're looking to do is to do a personal plan for them. You're not saying, get out of here because you've not got enough talent for my system. What you're saying is, once you know what you want to do, then I'll do a personal plan for you, which is very inclusive, which is great. Have you got any thoughts about the early specialization, Evie?
I haven't really thought about it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure what it means by early specialization.
Well, say for example, like gymnastics, the people go in and they start doing gymnastics and they only do gymnastics. It's very similar to figure skating. You know, for example, if you look at the skaters, they are typically spending hours and hours a day on the ice.
Yeah.
And only doing skating as a sport, whereas cross training would actually suggest that they should do other sports as well. Vicky put up a great one as well. Vicky, do you want to speak about your response to challenge number 1?
Yeah, I think it's just base what you're doing going forward on like continuous regular assessment and, you know, personalize those training plans based on what you've assessed. It's almost like don't try and predict it, just deal with what you've got now.
Yeah, exactly. Finley, before we sort of start to draw more conclusions on it, have you got anything? Have you managed to put something up, or is it going to come up?
I'm struggling quite a lot, to be honest.
Well, what I think I would like to share with you, do you remember me sharing with you that inclusive skating doesn't have a talent identification system?
Yeah.
And I think that's the simplest way to actually to deal with it, because if you have a talent identification system, what that presupposes is that some people will go into the training pathway and other people are going to get an inferior training development plan. I really can't see the justification in that. What do you think are the additional factors that make that even more problematic in something like inclusive skating?
A lot of people have different issues that need to be addressed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just write that up for you. So they've all got additional needs. They can vary, so that, that there's, so prediction is even harder. Is there any justification for it? What are we actually trying to do?
Teach people figure skating.
Okay, we're trying to teach people how to skate. So as Vicky said, we'll just do it. Just get on with it, One of the things that we do have to be mindful of, though, do we have enough resources?
Actually, not sure, to be honest.
Right. If resources are limited, and particularly with ice, they generally are, it's difficult to get access to the ice. If the ice is limited, how do you think you should allocate the resources for skating generally, and then for inclusive skating, if you've got a scarce resource?
You could create groups maybe to kind of create more resources in a sense, like create more time.
That's a good one. Create more time because you've got more training. Yep. That's good. Anything else that you could do? What about the fact that we discussed that you're teaching people how to skate. What about the people that just want to come in and do social skating? How many of the resources should be allocated to people that only want to do social skating?
And resources, is it like the ice, like the segment of the ice?
Yeah, exactly.
You could section off the ice, or you could
Now, you see, it's interesting you say that, because that is one of the things you could do. You could section off some ice. And do you remember in the Time Capsule Club, that's what was being done for a while?
Yeah.
They had it, so some people could get lessons on the top half of a tiny ice rink, and you could have social skating going in the other half of the ice rink. Did you like skating when it was sectioned off like that, Finlay?
Not particularly.
Good. Why not?
I think, especially in a smaller rink as well, it makes it a lot harder to do lessons. And also, I think, I don't know about the other half of it. I didn't really think about that too much, but I know for lessons, it created a lot of like boundaries, made it a lot harder to do things.
Yeah, because you lack space. Yeah, absolutely.
I think if it was like a bigger rink, like maybe like Braehead or something, it would be fine.
Yeah, it could be fine there as well. But obviously, when we're not skating out in a great big pond out in the outdoors where you've got, a huge expansive space. What about if there are other times where social skating is available?
Yeah, that would work quite well.
Exactly. Because if they're only wanting to do social skating, are they wanting coaching?
No.
No. Right. So for me, that is the sort of like the dividing line. If their ambition is if they're social, they're not wanting coaching. Is that correct? Is that yeah, exactly. So I think if they're only wanting to do social skating and they're not wanting to enter into a training plan to develop, as a sport, then I think that there is some justification in not putting them through a training pathway because they don't want the training pathway.
Mm-hmm.
What they're looking for is a social side of things. But do you think that they want the opportunity to learn how to skate so that they can socially skate?
Yeah, I think if they're beginning, then yeah.
So you still want to provide opportunities for beginners. Yeah. Right. But let people jump off, go social if they want. And that goes to the point that Vicky was making, where she said, like, continually assess everyone and base your training plan on these. Do you want to come in with anything else on that point, Vicky? Because it's an excellent point.
I think it's just about, sometimes it's almost a little bit of signposting. So kind of if someone is wanting to be a social skater, you teach them.
I think she's got an interruption there. We'll just wait for Vicky to come back. Hi, Vicky. We just waited for you because we realised you had a bit of an interruption there.
It's all right. Yeah, it's just about kind of signposting people. Once they've got the skills that they want to learn, it's like tell them where they can go with it. Yeah, exactly. And I think also being upfront about it. If the opportunity that you're providing is coaching and training, which you're going to make available to everyone, then there's also the necessity that they do turn up and train. That it's not a matter of that they're going to get to skate on that ice and do nothing and just hang out the barrier. If they're going to get a scarce resource and they really want to have a bit of a chat, they could do that off the ice. That there are other opportunities. And yes, you should maybe consider, if you're running your clubs or your sessions, that you provide social opportunities for everyone. But if they're only social skaters, then you maybe want to think about how that is actually, how the resources are being allocated. What about going back to this point about specialisation? What do you think you could do to avoid specialisation? And I might ask Evie to have a think about that, because I think Evie might be the youngest one here.
I'm still slightly unsure what specialisation means in this kind of context.
Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples. Say, for example, you were doing like a cross-training type system, then they might do 2 or 3 different sports. And I'll give you an example. Like, for example, Juliana was skating seriously from about the age of 7. As soon as she was well enough. Before 7, she wasn't well enough. And before that, she'd be off doing, like these like play dome, gym type activities. But I let Juliana take part in hockey for a couple of years while she could still see the ball. It did get quite problematic. But she was doing another sport. So she was also doing hockey. And there's no cross overlap. There's no benefit, in reality between playing hockey and ice skating. They really are very different sports. So it would be doing another completely different sport that you'd be doing regularly. You'd be taking part in training, and she'd be doing training for hockey maybe 3 times a week. So that would be a system that didn't allow that. So, for example, the Russian girls skaters who are clearly doing, hours and hours of skating training every single day and aren't doing another sport. That would be what we would call early specialization, only doing that sport and not another. So
okay.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So early specialization would be a bad thing for like the child's health if they're like not enjoying it, but would benefit their sport. Is that right?
I think that the evidence would suggest that certainly in the short term, that the early specialisation helps the sport. It's whether or not it does it long term that I think that's where the jury is out. Vicky, I can see you having thoughts about that. What's your thoughts on it?
I think there's a way to, I think it should be encouraged, is to avoid that early specialisation, but I know some coaches will want people doing things that benefit the sport, and I think the way you sell it is, well, okay, I think the thing with the one that springs to mind with skating is other types of dance. It's like, okay, you're not on the ice, but it's a different social group and it's going to help, you know, train your body in a different way that'll help on the ice.
Oh yeah,
like with the flexibility and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. And I think similar sports like gymnastics as well. And they're usually very popular with people who like doing those sorts of activities because they're sort of like fairly individual sports. They rely on things like music and such like. There are some sports, for example, speed skating and cycling, where it's well known that the same muscle groups are being used. So a lot of people that are doing speed skating, whether or not it's ice or inline, will also be good cyclists. And there's quite a number of Olympic gold medalists who medalled in both speed skating and cycling, which is quite an interesting one. Okay, and we've got the thing about young athletes being grouped into age groups as well. Okay, do you want to take a snapshot of that? Right, and you can pop that into your portfolio, because I want to have a look. There's another video that I want to, which we've got ready. Tell me when you're ready.
There we go. Yeah, I'm ready.
I'm good.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. And I want to watch that next video, which we've got ready. Wonderful. Oh, no, sorry. I pressed on the wrong one. No. Disappeared. Oh, it's obviously taken me off it, which is a bit of a pain. Sorry about that. I know which one I wanted. There we are. I want to see this one. Right, can you see that?
Spark your little one's imagination with the Big Steps range.
Can you see that video? It's not looking.
No.
We can't see anything, it's just loading.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Good, because I was still. And do you know something? I think it was available there on another page. Yeah, it was there all along. Full screen.
Congratulations, coach. Another chapter under your belt. This was a key chapter in our quest to become a child-centered coach. Remember that our job is to give children what they need and want at different stages of development so they can enjoy a positive and developmental sport experience. In this chapter, we focused on the who of the coach decision-making model. To do so, we put our 4D goggles and explored how children develop from a biopsychosocial perspective across the 4 beams of the SPEC model. As we travel along the 4 beams of the SPEC model, we saw that children changed dramatically from 5 to 12 years of age on all 4 dimensions. It is paramount for coaches to get a grip of how this multidimensional development happens. The key, as always, is to keep children in the learning zone, creating enough stretch for them to develop without overwhelming them. Not a small feat. At a social level, we emphasized the need to create opportunities for children to interact and work with other children and adults. In this way, they're able to grow their repertoire of social skills. Small group work and problem-solving activities were recommended. From a physical perspective, we showed you how growth is steady during the childhood years. This creates the conditions for kids to learn a great variety of foundational motor skills, and so coaches should really promote this in their sessions. As children enter puberty, their height and weight increase rapidly. As coaches, we must be mindful of their new, quick changing proportions, which will be causing havoc in their general and specific coordination, and help them relearn some basic skills they had already mastered before their growth spurt. In terms of emotional development, the key is understanding that children must be given the time and opportunity to first label and understand their emotions. Once they can do this, they will be able to progressively be aware of the emotions they are experiencing and their impact on themselves and on other people. From here, our role as coaches is to support them through this process of gaining emotional self-regulation. Scolding and shouting will not cut it. Explanations, discussions, and role modeling will go a lot further. And remember, children can progress and regress emotionally. So don't be disheartened if a child all of a sudden seems not to be able to control an emotion that they had no problem with before. Finally, we looked at cognitive development. We saw that the capacity of children to receive and assimilate information, to work through problems and find multiple solutions, to use abstract thinking, and to produce and communicate information for others will increase dramatically all through childhood. Again, as a coach, our job is to be constantly testing these capacities and to be on the lookout for opportunities to stretch them and take them to new levels. The activities we use, the pedagogical choices we make, and our leadership style may need to constantly adapt to this ever-changing landscape. Isn't that fun? Okay, so before we wrap up this chapter, let's review again some very important ideas we introduced earlier that should always be at the back of our mind when thinking about child development. 1, development is not linear. Children will take steps forward and steps back. We must be patient. 2, all developmental areas are interconnected. At times, one can be a gatekeeper to another. For instance, a child who cannot regulate emotions may struggle to learn and to develop cognitively. 3, children develop at different paces on the 4 beams. That's why we have to consider all beams and not base our coaching on just the more visible physical beam. And 4, 2 children of the same chronological age may be poles apart in one or more of the beams because they may have a different biological or training age. That is, because they may be early or late maturers, or because they may have been training for longer. Okay, that was a wild ride indeed. Thank you to all the experts that have helped us make sense of this very important topic. Now go to the quiz and smash it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next chapter, where we will fully explore the idea of physical literacy, movement skills, and conditioning the children's body so they can lay a solid foundation to build a big house on when the time is right.
Let's come out of that. Okay. Right, so what's your thoughts about that, just off the top of your head without necessarily going on to a whiteboard just now?
I thought it was interesting how you said something about children developing like emotional kind of feelings and their personality growing at different rates. And you've got to remember that because they could be emotionally unstable, and you've got, as a coach, you've really got to take that into account.
Yep. I think that's a really, really good point. And I think particularly for the inclusive skaters, because they've got so much more going on, so they could be more emotionally unstable than otherwise. And for some of them, that is actually you know, the medical condition, for want of a better word, that they're actually coping with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So that's a really good one. Vicky, what's your thoughts on it?
I think similar to Evie, that there's a lot to remember with it, and it's how one thing can affect another.
Mm-hmm.
I think particularly with skating, it's especially as you start doing the harder stuff, there needs to be, it's almost a level of kind of emotional intelligence to like be determined enough to keep doing something that you actually find really difficult, or you know, at times kind of scary.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, because it's a difficult sport. You've actually got to spend a certain amount of time, you know, to be actually able to develop and to do some training. What do you think is the minimum amount of time that you would expect a participant to be doing if they're going to be doing a training program?
Depends if it was on or off the ice. So I know with my coach, I do one on ice lesson, which is half an hour during the week because I've got school till crazy late. But I have quite a lot of off ice sessions to help with the skating, and that helps me.
So your half an hour lesson, how much time do you spend on the ice in total on the day that you've got your lesson?
45 to an hour.
So about an hour. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And maybe an hour, 2 hours off ice?
Yeah, about that.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Evie, sorry, Vicky, what's your thoughts on, what do you think is the amount of time that you would need to do to be able to engage in a training program is really what I'm thinking about.
The way I've always thought of it is the way that I was taught it, which is that for kind of every half an hour that you're doing in a lesson, you should try and practice for an hour on your own. I might have the amounts wrong, but it is something like that. So I'd probably say an hour and a half a week to start with. And that could be on ice or off ice as well.
Yeah, that sounds good. Finlay, what do you think is and we're only talking about minimums, what do you think is the minimum that you would want to be engaging with your students? Because this is almost like the antithesis of specialization. This is, you know, where do you actually start from?
I think anywhere between like an hour to 2 hours is like minimum.
Yeah, I think so. And it's quite interesting, you know, how inclusive skating has just become an approved activity provider for the Duke of Edinburgh Awards scheme. And they've got that you've got to be doing 1 hour of physical activity a week. That's what they're looking at, and that everyone should have a goal for the length of time. And for the bronze award, it's a minimum of 3 months. For the silver, it's a minimum of 6 months. And for the gold, it's a minimum of a year. Across the activities, it could be longer if you're doing the gold as you are Duke of Edinburgh Direct. But I think that's quite a good guideline. I think that's, if you're doing something for less than, you know, 3 months, 1 hour a week, you can't really do very much with it. So that gives you your minimum. Now let's have a look at the spectrum, and let's think about people that are doing the sport of skating. Now, you may be able to find out the data if you go onto the ISU website and you look at the different skaters. So you may already know, how much time do you think, for example, the Russian girl skaters or average high level performers at the Olympics are actually spending on training a week? And you can share your thoughts as you wish.
I'm just trying to work it out at the moment, because they'd be doing on ice and off ice probably well over 2 hours at least every day. So
I think maybe 25 hours. That's the number that I have in my head, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I don't think you're far. What's your thoughts, Vicky?
I was trying to work out is, like, could any of them be doing it as almost like a full-time job, which I know mine is 37 hours a week, but maybe.
I think maybe they are. You know, if you actually have a look, you know, at the World Championships, they give like an information sheet, and they usually say how many hours of training they're doing in the on season and the off season, and so that can vary as well. Which is quite, we'll come into that a bit more when we're talking about the how to, but I think on average, you're looking, the top end of the spectrum will on average be 25 hours a week. Okay, so do you think that comes within the realms of early specialization? Yeah, exactly. Now let's have a look at, there was, I'm pretty sure I've got it. Yeah, I do. And see if I can get it. Yep. Whatever we look at this, I'm going to share the screen again because I've got it ready. Do you remember he shared a document and he was talking about the positives and the negatives of the training development pathway? So, and I could see you all kind of wanting to have a good look at it. And I thought it was really interesting as well. So I'm just going to move that up just a little bit so you can sort of like see it. And just have a look at them and the things that you think that are particularly significant on those lists. Do you want to share with us what your thoughts are about it?
I think in terms of physical, I think it does improve like your muscles, your endurance and stuff like that. But I think injury is a big factor in it because you're doing a lot more movements with your joints and stuff. So it does increase the injury rate.
Yeah, it does. So that puts a lot of responsibility on the coach, particularly in what you're actually doing with them. Because if you know that they're going to be doing certain activities on the ice and it's going to result in more problems with, for example, injuries. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Do you remember there was an Olympic champion that you may have heard of called Viktor Petrenko? And he won the Olympics, I think, round about 1976, 1980. No, because it was Robin in 1980. So he must have been about 84. And he had a brother, Vladimir Petrenko, who had a very bad back injury. And I was speaking to his coach because I'd been working with his coach for some time, Viktor Kudryavtsev. And he said that the problem that Viktor that they had protected Viktor from was that was really at the time when they were doing the high rotation jumps. And Vladimir, the elder brother, they thought a better skater than Viktor, but he had taken the back injury because he was doing a lot of rotational jumps and he actually developed a twist in his spine. So what they did with Viktor to protect him from that injury was they spent more time teaching the skaters to do everything in both directions. And so as a matter of course, all of those skaters that were coming out of that system, and they were in the Ukraine part of what was then the USSR. So they were Russians, but they were Ukrainian Russians. And they were actually, many of their skaters, and I skated with them, were actually doing things like axels and double jumps in both directions. And quite a lot of the top skaters can actually spin in both directions, which is almost a way of avoiding specialization, because what you're doing if you're specialization, you're always spinning in one direction. So you can actually do things within your training plan that stop over specialization, because, for example, you might be doing it as a lefty. And what you'll also see, like, for example, when I'm training Juliana, we do quite a lot of work on things like compulsory elements and figures. And I'm constantly getting her to do twizzles right foot, twizzles left foot, loops right foot, left foot on all of the different edges, so that you're developing the body equally on both sides. So get to know where the weak side is and try to identify where the weaknesses are, so that if you are doing specialization, then you're actually building things into the training plan that are actually going to prevent those injuries from occurring. And I'll give you another example. One of the things that you find when you're skating is you're using the forward muscles quite a lot. You're not using your backward muscles. So, for example, one of the things that we do in off-ice training, and certainly I did it particularly with Juliana when she was younger, get them to do things like jump backwards, walk backwards, so that you're actually doing the opposite of what you're doing on the ice to avoid the problems of over-specialization in a particular type of movement. So what you can be doing is building into the training plan things that are going to deal with the negatives of the particular training program that you're doing. So that's an excellent one, and that's some suggestions for you. Any other thoughts on it?
It's going to have a big impact on the social life. So they could be tired the whole time, not just physically, but also mentally.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could lead to other problems like anxiety and, you know, self-harm is on there, and that's a massive problem that you as a coach have to be very aware of.
I think that's a really big important. It's one of the reasons why we actually chose to do the Duke of Edinburgh Award scheme, was because I was very mindful of the fact that I don't want people just to become people that are going to become, you know, like training skaters, taking part in competitions. I really wanted them to have the opportunity to develop their whole self, so that they could go off and do some other activities if they so wished, that they could go and learn how to volunteer and become part of the organisation, that they could go off and do a residential activity or an expedition that was completely different from what they're actually doing as part of their skating activities. Because you want them to develop something where you know that they can achieve if they do some sort of a commitment. Have you got any thoughts, Vicky, that you would like to share?
I think similar to Evie, it's that self-harm kind of thing is jumping out at me, because like skaters want to do well, and they want to, you know, they want to make their coaches proud of them. Mm-hmm. But for some people, there might be a tendency to do that in an unhealthy way, and I think that's it's something as coaches you have to look out for the signs of it, like really early.
Yeah, I think the estimates are that within figure skating, that 70% of the girls may have an eating disorder. What things can you do to avoid that?
I think it's just having conversations, kind of, it's really hard to explain.
I think also having a positive attitude towards things as well.
Yeah, it's like it's promoting that positivity of whatever, you know, whatever size and shape you are, that you can, you know, you can still, I think a lot, especially when you start getting into doubles, I know I had this, that I assumed you had to have that quite athletic build to be able to get the height and the rotation. And I've been told by my lovely coaches that no, that's not a thing. Oh. It helps. It definitely helps make it easier, but it's possible, you know.
Yeah. And when you can see Juliana landing an axle.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, yeah, it is possible. There are some things that you can do, like certainly with inclusive skating, I spend quite a bit of time trying to think of ways. And for example, there's one thing that the costume rule with inclusive skating is that it must be suitable for athletic performance and nothing else. So if the girl wants to wear trousers, she wants to cover herself up a bit more, absolutely fine. It really doesn't matter. Whereas if you look at some sports, for example, if you look at the beach ball, you know, you had this rule, which is only now getting changed, where the girls had to wear this teeny little bikini top. Right. Now, how many girls, you know, particularly when they're teenagers, and the growth development curve shows that at the age of 15, girls are at their relative, you know, heaviest, fattest, you know, relative to size. And everyone is, it's, you know, there's a development pathway. You just look at the size and the weight, and, you know, that's it. Being a 15-year-old girl is pretty rubbish, to be really honest. It's really not a good place to be. So if you're aware of that, share that. And sometimes just sort of saying to them, are you aware of, this is what happens when you're 15, it's just your age. Don't worry about it. Everything sort of like settles down. There are some talent ID systems whereby they weigh the girls every single day. And some sports have done that historically. What do you think of that as being something? Would you do that?
I think it's quite intrusive.
Well, I wouldn't want to do that to myself, so I'm not going to make a skater do it.
Exactly. Well, so glad you said that, because I'd be horrified if you did it. Now, what things could you do as well to help to support them socially? Because even although we want them in a training plan, we want them to do at least a week of training a week. What things can you do to help to support that sort of like character development?
You could make the sessions more fun.
Yeah.
So like add games into them.
Yeah.
Sort of have fun, tell each other jokes, make each other laugh. Just makes that bit of skating just a bit better, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And I've seen so many like fun activities. In fact, I was looking at one, Sergio, who was doing, he's like the main person on the MOOC courses. And he was doing a great like warm up where he had the athletes warming up and they had a balloon that was blowing up and they had them all working in pairs. One person had to take the balloon to the other side and then run back with it and then give it to the other person by knocking it with the hand. And then the other person had to go and do the same thing and then give it back to the other person. And the teams, they were in pairs. They had to kind of like beat each other, who could be finished first. And it's just a warm up. It was just a bit of fun. So I would say that having fun activities built in, particularly doing things with another person. So building in some activity that they're actually going to be working either in a small group or in some sort of like fun environment really, really does help. And awareness. I love the way that, I think it was Vicky, you also said have a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Great one.
Because I think certainly the skaters I know, we all know what's going on at the higher levels with especially eating disorders and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think if coaches don't acknowledge it, it's almost like brushing it under the carpet. It's like, no, that doesn't happen. It's like, well, actually it does, but let's protect the next generation from it.
I love that. That is so good. That is so good. There's a lot of research that shows that elite athletes they're very, very vulnerable. And if you think of the inclusive athlete, they are more vulnerable than the able-bodied. So if you take someone that you might be wanting to train as an elite additional needs skater, they're going to be at the most vulnerable end of absolutely everyone. So it's really good that you're aware of all of those sorts of issues. Really well done. Well, the hour has flown by. I hope you enjoyed that. What's your key, what's the most important thing that you learned today that you would like to take away? And if we could start with Evie and then Finlay and then finally Vicky.
The fact that the talent identification should focus on predicting potential, not predicting the actual skill of the skater. So the potential would be like their mindset and your mindset and how far you're willing to go with each other.
I think that's a great one, because all you're really doing is evaluating what's their motivation to do some training. And you've already identified your minimum. You're looking for someone that's going to do at least an hour a week. Perfect. Finlay, what's your thoughts on it? Your takeaway?
I don't really think I could top Evie's. I think it's similar in a sense, I guess. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I can't really reword it. It's what Evie said. It was really good.
Yeah, I like what Evie said. I'll second you on that one. Vicky, what would you like to finish off with?
Yeah, again, Evie said it really well, but I think the other thing is those factors that make talent identification quite difficult. That is something I didn't know about and really think about, to be honest. So it's good to kind of know what the kind of the pros and cons of it are, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. And there will be expectations on you when you're coaching that you will participate in those systems. So if you know the weaknesses and the strengths, then you've got the knowledge and the insight as to what's good and bad about them, and you can make choices. And you can also educate other people as to the way that you're going to coach and the wider environment that you're coaching within and how it should operate. You can have a really positive impact. Well done. Excellent. And I look forward to getting all your videos very shortly as well for the competition. I'll stop this recording.